Damn it, LeBron James is his own man. You're wearing a Lakers uniform. You are a player. You know your coach is on the hot seat. And deciding to do a podcast about games, about basketball, with specifics in mind, schemes, and how you coach and how you draw plays up. And you knew the Lakers would more than likely be looking for a coach next season is one of the most egregious things we have seen a basketball player do to a coach.
Spicy Steve right there.
You know, I've been looking forward to disagreeing with him at least
were
one
you,
time today.
Were you watching?
We haven't had,
excuse me, were you watching?
Oh, I was watching at home last night. I was like, oh, I'm going to be on. Okay, I'm going to be on.
Who was challenging him?
Wendy. Well, you were.
Thank you.
You were.
And Wendy as well.
And Wendy.
All right. You wanted to talk to him about this. Sure.
So I can't allow you to put this on Bron all the way.
Put what on Bron specifically? I'm just asking.
Well, how egregious it was that the timing aspect of this aligned with almost seeming as if it was predictive of him and his team that it would position JJ, or the fact that he would talk schemes that would then undermine Darwin Ham.
Okay.
There are a lot of players that have podcasts. Player P talks schemes, right, about other teams. Obviously, LeBron James is different. Right. Just for some context, I mean, between Maverick and LeBron and Spring Hill, we've been talking about doing a show like this for years, for a very long time, around basketball intricacies, nuances, schemes. How would you defend DHOs? How would you defend guys like Jokic? You know, would you blitz Luka Doncic in the PNR? We love schemes. Like, I talk schemes all the time with my friends. You and I have talked schemes on sets before. I think it's actually it's an incredible value proposition within the marketplace because nobody really does that at that level. Okay. So that has already been in the works for a while. I think that JJ actually was the perfect person to talk schemes to. Actually make a case also that depending upon who they've gotten invested by, Redbird and Fenway and companies like that, they have a lot of capital to deploy.
Equity, venture capital.
Yeah, it's Spring Hill, right? They have a lot of capital to deploy as it relates to a platform like JJ. So I just wanted to come to the defense a little bit that this wasn't a multi-year approach in which it was set up for JJ to then become the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, LeBron James is one of the most brilliant minds we have in the game.
Without question.
He's great. But they haven't been referencing schemes that the Lakers have employed. They've been referencing schemes around the league. So I just want to make sure that we're not inciting that LeBron's main mission by having a podcast was to undermine the likes of Darwin Ham. Watching games this year, there was a lot of personnel decisions that I questioned.
That you questioned on numerous occasions.
That we've talked about around Darwin Ham. I think Darwin Ham could still be a good coach in the NBA. I just think for the pressure that LeBron James has right now, it's going to be different. Okay.
So you're saying it wasn't premeditated?
I don't think it was premeditated at all.
Okay.
I think it just evolved into that because of the relationship that happened. It just
organically happened.
Yes.
We're not faulting JJ in any way for doing the podcast or for the content on the podcast with LeBron James. But at some point in time, we do have to do this, Jay. As I said to Wendy last week, we have to remember the things that we've said about LeBron James as it pertains to his brilliance, as it pertains to controlling a narrative, as it pertains to being 2, 3, 5 steps ahead of others in terms of what you're plotting and what you're planning and what have you. And then that'll raise an antenna. We knew before the podcast ever started that Darwin Ham was on the hot seat. We knew this. Now, in fairness to LeBron James, when the news came out, hell, we celebrated it right here on this show. Oh, it's going to be great. It's mind the game. They're talking the game. I mean, they're talking basketball. This is fantastic. I mean, JJ Redick's a brilliant basketball mind. LeBron James, we know what he is. No problem. But as the podcast gained steam, and then the spotlight became more magnifying for Darwin Ham, and then you saw an Anthony Davis after game 2 against Denver talk about how lost and, you know, we just weren't on the same page. We just seemed to be out of sync, et cetera, et cetera. We saw all of these things. Then we started having the others, and not necessarily us as a show, Jay, just the industry itself. Everybody was talking about how LeBron's had all of these coaches. You've never really heard him speak up for a coach, even though Rich Paul and them would say he spoke up for Ty Lue and stuff like that. We thought Ty Lue should have got the job. The Lakers shouldn't have been in a position trying to tell him to pick his staff, trying to underpay him, all of this other kind of stuff. We looked at all of those things, and we said, you take all of those things into account, this does not look good. That you got to and what I was saying on the air with Wendy last week and Molly was that couldn't have started it during the playoffs. Couldn't have started it after Darwin Ham lost the job. Did you have to start it in the middle of the damn season when he's on the hot seat? Because why? That's what some of the coaches were saying.
No, I understand what you're saying there, but this is where I have to push back.
Sure.
If LeBron didn't want Darwin Ham as his head coach, don't you think there's other ways he could go about it rather than orchestrating a whole podcast with JJ Redick? I mean, that feels
Let me say this. I am not in any way
very calculated.
I am not in any way accusing LeBron James.
You're just saying the look of it overall.
Exactly.
You're saying the optics after the fact.
Right. I'm not saying he orchestrated something to push Darwin Ham out the door to get JJ Redick the job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not going there. What I'm saying is you are a person known for being mindful and cognizant of the optics. How could you possibly think that was going to look good? And that's why I came up with, I didn't know 1 + 1 = 4. I apologize, everybody. I didn't know that because you can't tell me that that's something that you were completely oblivious to. Now, you may not have cared. You may not have cared. Now, but that does not mean that he orchestrated something to get JJ Redick in and Darvin Ham out. I'm not trying to imply that. I'm simply saying the optics were bad.
No.
And in the end, you can't say that you weren't mindful about it. You probably just didn't care.
I guess I get the after fact, but Jay, in terms of the timeline, I don't think anyone was thinking of JJ Redick as a coaching candidate at that point. I think you're just thinking a contemporary to LeBron, around the same age, basketball mind.
Totally.
I mean, I guess
it's not like you brought on a
Well, I guess that's
coach.
a challenge, though. It's a challenge of, and I understand what you're saying overall, how it looks within that moment when things started to happen, but I guess the context, that had been in the works for so long. Am I supposed to then pull the plug on the launch date of something that, frankly, could make a lot of money because of the conversation that's missing in the marketplace? I find that to be a little unfair, even if it is a bad look. It's the reality of the situation.
No,
but here's another thing that's an important nugget to point out. Some of that conversation, and Wendy's standing over there, he'll confirm this, some of that conversation took place before we learned that Danny Hurley was somebody that was going to get offered the job. And so what happened is when JJ elevated to being the primary target in a lot of people's eyes for the Lakers job, that further made it look worse. And then all of a sudden it dialed back because Danny Hurley was going to get offered the job.
But Stephen A., think about the narratives involving Danny Hurley now. Some people are saying he just did it to get more money from UConn, and that the Lakers always wanted JJ Redick. It was just a ploy. Like, you can't go by narratives and what other people say. People are always going to talk, and you know this more than anybody.
But here's what you're missing. If a bunch of ladies in the world of sports are texting Molly, they're in it. And they're telling you this is how they feel.
No, and I understand that, especially with the coaching.
But wait a minute. It's not just that. They're not just coaches. They're in the locker rooms. They're with players. They're around executives. They're in the arenas. They have access to situations and circumstances we hear about through word of mouth, et cetera, et cetera. They're in it. So what I'm saying is you have not a whole bunch or anything like that. It was about 5 or 6 calls that I received. But what I'm saying is they were saying this kind of stuff. They feel this way.
That it undermined Darvin Ham.
They feel that it undermined. Not that JJ Redick is guilty of anything. They believe that this undermined Darvin Ham because it was highlighting what he wasn't bringing to the table. And if anybody should have had a heightened level of sensitivity to that, it should have been LeBron.
You go to a lot of games.
Yes, sir.
You've been to a lot of Laker games. You've seen a lot of Cleveland games. How many times have you and I recognized LeBron in the huddle saying, like, let's run him cross? He be taking over timeouts now.
But he's done that with everybody.
That's what I'm saying. I've seen it before. I've seen it. And Eric went like this a couple times. Okay. Like, that makes sense.
Yes.
It's about learning how to cohabitate with that. So I I don't see that undermining. I just see that showcasing how LeBron's brain.
And I'm saying to you,
right,
let's say that my last comment would be.
You're saying the perception of it.
My last comment would be, fine, Jay. I'm not going to even disagree with you, as long as you're willing to concede that there are employees in the NBA, in the coaching ranks, who feel differently.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I can concede that.
That's what
I can see the effects of that.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's fair. That's what it is.
Look at us all seeing both sides.
No.
I mean,
we want to be fair.
No.
That's serious.
I never thought about that. I never thought about that POV from that perspective, though.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I know.